Recording in progress.
So it doesn't really matter because we're just gonna start vibing into it. And then at a certain point, we're just gonna get it rolling, my man. We're just gonna get it rolling. I'm super excited to have you on today's podcast, to be honest with you. It's been a while, Crocodile, since we last
Years.
spoke. And I'm super excited because, every time we speak, and we have been over the last couple of months on a regular basis, which I really, really, really appreciate. And you've
Mhm.
been a great help for me. You've been such a, I wouldn't, I mean, if you would have asked me a couple of months ago, I would have said like, yeah, Daniel, you're like you're like the reason for, why I got better and why everything like turned out so well. But I think you were just like an amplificator, right? A catalyst for things to come and for change to happen. So that's why I'm really happy and proud to have you as my first guest and my first proper interview here on this podcast. Because this podcast came a long way. It's been in the making and as a thought already since, man, I don't know how many years, even since before I started my first podcast with Felix. The
Yeah.
idea for the podcast was already there, for the Journey Beyond podcast. The name wasn't clear, but I knew that, I need, everyone has their own source of self-expression, and everyone kind of needs to get into their own state to do something with his God-given gifts, and I think my voice, which started realizing this year, is definitely my God-given gift. Um so I just said to myself, man, fuck it, let's go. I just have to do something with it. I have to use it. If I don't use it, I'm stupid. So I guess podcast was the best thing for me to do. And yeah, bro, I think you have been a major, major, um, how should I call it? Like, I only know the German word right now. That's weird. So we're not. I'm not actually putting this on the podcast, but
So,
you've you've been like this Stein in der Brandung for me.
ja, exakt. Und Schmetterlinge. Ja.
Exactly, the Schmetterlinge. So yeah, man, how are you doing? How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm excited after this podcast. I'm driving to Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Weekend, uh, doing like a men's retreat. So that's gonna be really nice. Just gonna be unplugged and in nature and with men of God and just hanging out. So that's gonna be awesome.
Mm, yeah, I can imagine. How did you? Who's organizing it?
So actually, when I first moved to LA 10 years ago, um, I
It's a long
met a
time, man.
guy, I was new to LA obviously, and I met a guy we started talking about church and God and all this stuff, and he's like, "Hey, you should come to this men's group I go to."
Hmm.
And I've been going for 10 years now. And so basically, it's called LA Men's Group, and it's not a church, it's guys from all different churches in Los Angeles, like even sometimes an hour and a half away. And once a month, we all come together, and there's a speaker, and we uh, just get together, talk about the Lord, talk with each other. It's pretty awesome, and it's nice for me. I'm 28 now, and I'm on the younger side. So there's some guys that come in that are like 22, 23, but most of them are 35 and plus. And
Mm.
it's just nice to have kind of older, wiser role models. Um,
Yeah, because I guess you get to learn from them a lot about their life experience, and I would say like now being 28, you've been through a lot, and I can say like I'm 27, I've been through a lot as well, but I cannot imagine. Just imagine you putting like 10 years on top. Just imagine where you were 10 years ago, right? Like that, like that difference that it makes in just a couple of years, how much change can come into your life and how much you can change as a person. It's incredible. And I think, um yeah, bro, that sounds like an amazing thing. Whenever I come by to LA, I want to experience your life through your eyes, right? And that's something which I'm really looking forward to be honest with you. I have a friend of mine today at work. She just came back from Miami. So she visited the States for the first time, and she said, like, yeah, man, I'm loving it so much. I'm gonna go back in like in March next year to Los Angeles. And I actually told her that if she goes, because she's a real she's a real angel and she's really cool. So I told her, like, honestly, I'm gonna hook you up with my friend Daniel,
Yeah.
because even if he's going to be busy and he's probably going to be by then like a superstar and like super
Yeah,
successful
for sure.
and music is kicking off and everything, but I will hook you guys up. And if you could just point her to, like, she's probably going to come with a boyfriend, to some
Yeah.
cool spots, right? Like some cool things to do in LA, like what to do, what not to do, because
Definitely,
I
I
guess
definitely have a lot of
yeah,
good recommendations for
yeah,
sure.
bro, that's cool. Okay, so I would say we're in a good flow already. My man
Doesn't
Daniel, I'm super happy. I'm super happy. I can already see you're sipping on your strings of life,
mm,
on your cold brew. I think you're the only person in my surrounding that actually loves drinking cold brew, and it's something that makes you unique, and that's something that why I love you and why I brought you on this podcast here today. So thank you for coming to the Journey Beyond podcast, man. To be very honest with you, the Journey Beyond podcast was an idea that was it kind of sprung already like a couple of years back, when I had the idea of I wanted to put my word out, right? I have so much to share and so much I learned through you guys, because we go back like what now? 7 years? We go back seven
Yeah, I
years
think
and
so. Really quick,
that entire
is my
it's
audio
better.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
cool.
much better.
Yeah, I wanted to put this in.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. No, I'm super happy because like we go back like 7, 8 years now, and everything that I've learned only through the time that I was spending with you and with Luke and the entire group around, I took so much knowledge, so much wisdom. I grew so much as a person that already by then I knew that I have to do something with this knowledge in my mind, because um I'm not someone who's good at like painting. I'm not someone who I like writing, but I'm not like professional writer, right? But I love
Yeah.
talking. And I always knew
Mhm.
that this was kind of like my medium. So I knew already a couple of years ago what this podcast is going to be about, because I think my journey, what marked it out, was my personal path that I've been on over the last couple of years, that has helped me a lot to become the person that I am today, right?
Yeah.
And I think talking about authenticity, which has been the starting point of this episode, of this podcast, I think it's important to start with this, because I want to make this a journey. Like I want to turn this into a personal project where I just guide people through my life, and with them, through them, I advance in life, right? And I take like
Mhm.
different roads on. So what I was thinking about the format of this podcast, I was thinking, okay, what can you do? Like how can you structure this podcast in a way that is interesting, but that makes sense in a logical way? How you can guide people, right? Because in the beginning, you don't have interviews every single episode. It's hard, right? You got to start
Yeah.
off somewhere, and you want to share your knowledge. And I thought about that, authenticity is always the starting point, and it's going to be one of the main blocks of this entire podcast, which I want to drag along, because every person that we meet along the way, everyone has its unique gifts, and everyone is special in his own way, and everyone has made his own lessons. But then I thought, okay, so what if we take it a step further? What if you break it down a step further? What comes after, like, you talk about this authenticity? It's really a trending topic. But before you understand what authenticity means, you got to understand who you are, right?
Mhm.
And that topic of, who am I? What is that self? What is that me? What is that, this person called Tim? Like, what is he about? Like, what is his upbringing? What was the way that he was raised? Maybe he was raised in a completely different cultural background. Maybe he was raised through different values, through different beliefs. And this entire topic of identity was something that I wanted to bring up. And I have to say at this point, Daniel has been, or you have been, probably one of my biggest anchors throughout this year. You helped me throughout my darkest times, and you helped me see some light again, because it was really dark where I came from beginning of the year. And just through listening to you and having our weekly coaching sessions, bro, I learned so much about myself. And you didn't even tell me anything. You just gave me reflections, things
Mhm.
to delve upon, and it
Yeah.
helped me so much getting into my own path again, establishing my values, getting clear to the ground on my beliefs, who I want to become, who I am, and how I want to move forward. So it's an absolute honor to have you on this podcast today. Why don't you, because I've teased you a little bit already, right? A
Yeah.
tiny little bit
Yeah.
already. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Where are you actually speaking from right now? Because let's
Yeah.
let's be clear. This is not like a, hey, you're in Luxembourg and you're like 50 kilometers away, but no, you're actually on the other side of
Yeah,
the world kind
we're
of type of
far, we're
conversation.
far.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you would look behind me, it's dark, it's night already, and where you're at right now, it's probably morning, close to noon. So people
Yeah,
can guess already where you're at. So
yeah.
yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you again for having me on. It's definitely an honor to be on here, and I value our friendship a lot. And it's always just it's nice because we already talk about a lot of cool things, but when it's structured, I feel like we're able to really nail on the important stuff because we already choose our words carefully, but now it's more for an audience. So it's good for us to also explain it in a way where, because you and I already have a language that we use to communicate with each other. And so learning how to make it more accessible is really awesome. So right now I am in Hollywood, California.
Whoop
So
whoop.
yeah, I've lived here specifically for about a year and a half. Been in LA off and on for the past 10 years. I'm not going to go into like my whole story, but I'll start with when I started coaching, which was about 6.5, 7 years ago. Also, sorry about my lighting is going to go in and out. Don't have an amazing setup here,
It's
but
okay. That's okay.
um, but yeah, basically, in high school, I was sort of the advice guy. People would come to me, and I wouldn't even, future pace. Uh, I wouldn't say a lot. I would just explain the reality that I saw. I was like, this is where you are. This is where this person is, and if these paths continue, this is what's going to happen. And I was right most of the time. And so, but I liked that. I liked the feeling of people coming to me and me being able to help. And obviously, like I went through a lot of stuff. Um, and so I was doing it so much at one point that I was like, dang, I really want to kind of take this to the next level. And so I went through the Global Society of NLP. I got 4 different certifications, ranging from motivational coaching, life coaching, advanced NLP communication, and social and emotional intelligence coaching. I've coached everyone from age 12 to age 65 on everything you can think of, from sports to sort of trauma patterns, behavior modification, identity work, everything like that. But for me, the thing that I noticed over the years of coaching and just conversations, I've talked to so many people in my life, and the way that I think, I like talking to people about stuff that's deep kind of early on. That's just how I work. I don't really like the whole surface thing. So I've been able to learn a lot from a lot of different people. And especially from clients, what I realized is almost every problem, and I say almost because obviously you have your outliers and your variants, but it's all based off of our identity. And so I really just took that and hit the ground running with that concept going into client work. And so I specialize in helping people discover their identity through their behavior, core values, their environment, different things like that. And one of the biggest things I tell my clients as well is I'm not telling you anything new. Like I'm not this guru who comes in and just brings this mind-blowing new revelations, but because I'm the one who has all the wisdom. It's just helping you learn how to communicate with yourself and giving yourself a different perspective on who you are and using the products of your environment to realize that. And a lot of the step to solving a lot of problems is just realizing that there is one and then understanding where it's coming from, because once you figure out where it's coming from, it sort of solves that gnawing question of, gosh, why do I keep doing this? Or why is this happening to me? Or why is it that I always, people have so many why questions in their life. And so what I try to do is I make them tangible. So I move away from the why and we go to the who's involved, how is this happening? What specifically is happening? And you get specific because you can't solve a specific problem with a broad solution.
Mhm.
And the specificity usually is based off of the inner workings of their identity. And so rather than uh, pluck the fruit and then see, like, go down the trunk of the tree and see where the roots are, you start with the roots and be like, okay, you thought you were an apple tree and you're you're a pear tree, like you have it all wrong.
Yeah.
So just, helping people navigate that has been a blessing for me. I've been really blessed with some of the clients I've been able to coach. I mean, every client is a blessing, obviously. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, without getting into a lot of detail about that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. I think the topic of identity is something, because I think in our nowadays age, we throw around words that with so much power, which we don't really understand the meaning behind, right? So I
yeah,
think nowadays, if you look at social media in general, or if you look at the general coaching direction where we're going at, the words authenticity, identity,
mm,
paradigm shift, trauma, childhood trauma, inner child. Those words have so much power. Everyone's using them, but no one doesn't really know what it means, right?
yeah,
And I fully resonate with what you're saying, what you said before, with you're not really teaching people anything new, because you are
yeah,
just portraying, you are just showing people parts about themselves that they just don't see. They are there, they always have been there, but they're just
mm,
not in their peripheral vision. They block
yeah,
them out purposefully because maybe that part which you're trying to shine some light on maybe has certain hurts, feelings,
yeah,
emotions, like trauma. Even the word trauma is so heavy if you use it
mm,
nowadays.
mm,
That's why, like, I sometimes have difficulty saying trauma, because trauma is just hurt, right? You've been
yeah.
hurt in a
Well,
certain way, and it's
there's lowercase and uppercase, like
yes,
there's
100%,
the
hundred
minuscule T
percent,
and the uppercase T. So,
100%.
um, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
for sure. So, what would you say in from your perspective on that you've been working with a lot of clients already? You've been in that field now for a couple of years. What is identity for you? What does it mean, identity?
Yeah,
And why do you think specifically in this time now, like I think this time is just perfect right now because we're going from COVID to post lockdown to things normalize again to all of the crazy stuff happening in the world. Like, why do you think it's gaining so much traction? Why do you think it's gaining so much attention? Everyone wants to work on the identity part, on the authenticity part. So,
mm. Yeah. I think, the biggest thing, one of the things you said is, what is identity to me? And I think that's the tough part about it, is because everybody's identity is subjective. They all are going to identify however they think they can appear in this world.
mhm,
Um, what I've noticed, and there's people who will say, or coaches or whatever it is, and they're like, well, this is what identity is. This is what identity is. But I guess to make it simple, without me being involved, so it's not what identity is to me. What I have seen identity being for almost everybody I've ever talked to about the subject
mhm,
is, it's who you think you are. Like, it's that simple. It's this is what I think
mm,
I am, and based off of XYZ. Um, where it gets difficult is all of the factors that go into that statement. So things like your economic standing, your social status, your environment that you're in, your religion, your skin color, your ethnic background, like all of these different things make up your identity, and whichever one you feel the most drawn to, your identity is how you step into the world,
mhm,
which is why when you step in with a false identity, it is a long-term period of crisis, because you don't know who you are. You don't feel like you belong. It's anytime you hear someone say, I just feel like I've never belonged here. I don't feel, and so whatever aspects they're taking to make themselves who they think they are, uh, they take that, and that's how they step into the world. And the other thing is, your identity, you create your identity based off of what you want people to think about you because of who you think you are.
mhm,
And what's crazy is, a false identity, we will get people to affirm that even if it's not true, because we believe it is, right? And
mm.
so
I
that
feel I
it's
feel
that,
that I feel that.
yeah, it's that affirmation of like, I don't care what you see. I'm telling you what I am, and you will address me as such.
And that's usually exactly the way how like certain social environments form, because we usually, if we hold a certain identity and we don't want to drop it because it involves a lot of work and a lot of
Yeah.
pain, a lot of like different
Yeah.
emotions, we surround ourselves with people that affirm and through which we can get that external validation to be like, you have to tell me who I am because I want to be
Yeah.
reinforced in this
Yeah.
idea of who I am. That's big.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, and you see it, I mean, you see it everywhere. Like, look, all of the crises that we have in this world, it's an identity battle, you know, defensiveness. I mean, you even look at COVID, obviously it was a virus, but the way people handled it, they handled it based off of their identity.
Mhm.
Religious wars. I identify as someone who thinks this is the most important thing, and I'm going against someone who identifies as someone who thinks it's not, and we clash. And the reason those battles are so intense is because they're battles of ideology, and they're not physical battles. They're not even emotional. It's an ideal. And so you will never win a war of ideology in the ways that we handle it. It's just not going to happen, because to win, one of the parties has to completely re-alter their innermost being and their representation of themselves in this world, and that's what they're fighting for. So it's not going to happen, which is why all in Ecclesiastes it talks about there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been will be, everything that will be already has been. There's nothing new, because all of the crises that we have is a perpetuity of identity, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
even what's going on now, in the situation in the Middle East and Israel, it is a total identity war, and
100%.
the other thing is we only see so much. We think, like imagine, and I use this example a lot, all right, and not to get into politics, but this is an example of how little we actually know about our identity, right? So let's say someone identifies very heavily with a certain political party or a news outlet or whatever it is. But what happens is you send 10 videographers to the Middle East or wherever from no political parties. It's just 10 independent videographers, and they're all required to gather footage. So they all get footage. Out of those 10, they split them up, 5 and 5. Out of those 5, they take 2, and these 2 go to the left, and these 2 go to the right. And that's the story and the truth. So what happens is someone that identifies on the left side sees 2 videos out of 8 and establishes that as their reality. The other person on the right side sees 2 videos out of 8, not knowing that the other 2 from the first 10 are now part of that side, and they identify with those 2. And so the reality they're battling over isn't even true.
No, it's only a
It's
half
it's
reality.
been it's been sifted. So that's another thing too, is like, if you're going to identify with something, most of the time you're not even identifying with the fullness of what that thing is. And the funny and kind of a funny example I use too is, in America it's American football, and everywhere else in the world it's football, right? You identify with your team, and when something happens to your team you flip out, not because you care about the team, not because you care about whatever, but it's because of what it means to you. And someone is challenging your soul. They're not challenging your team when they talk crap about your team. They're challenging your decision making ability and your skill and who you support, and that's how we take it.
Your
And so so
beingness.
I could go
Yeah.
on and on and on, but um, that's it's what I've seen firsthand from
It's
clients and otherwise.
it's funny that you
Uh,
mentioned it because I wanted to bring up that example before as well, because I always have the great I don't know if you ever watched the movie Hooligans, like of this guy that got raised in Manchester, United Kingdom, right?
I
And
don't know.
he's like
Yeah,
a
I don't think
massive
I've seen that.
he's a massive football fan,
I've
and
heard of it.
you just see the diversity, or you just see the clash of two
Mm,
neighboring villages that follow two different teams, and they're ultra fans. They're literally the heartfelt. They are integrated. They are
mm,
literally
mm,
burned into that footballer identity of Manchester United or Liverpool or Newcastle, and they will literally do anything,
Oh yeah.
anything
Yeah.
possible to portray or to give over their messages. And if someone in the stadium is like booing at the wrong moment at your team, your emotions come up, and it's so fascinating
Yeah.
to see football, and probably like any other sport as well, but like in Europe we mainly have football, like football.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to see how emotionally attached people get to it, and
Yeah.
it's taking them over. They get into fights, they even kill just for the
Yeah.
sake of
Yeah.
defending their
Yeah, bro.
identity, their team, right? And I
Yeah.
think this is why identity is everything nowadays.
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you say as well? I mean, I have a couple of questions, actually two questions I have from what you said before, because you said that identity plays such a major role, but I'm wondering right now, because obviously we have been through quite some work already, and I have maybe like a different understanding because I've spent hours and hours and hours with you talking and listening to you explaining it to me. But now if someone would listen that is maybe not so much in that topic, right? And he's, let's say he's, working in a normal 9 to 5 job. He's doing his daily thing. Maybe he's married or unmarried. He is single or in a relationship, and this is his identity. Is there such a thing as like a right identity, a true identity? Is there such a thing as like the right path or the wrong path? And how can someone even evaluate if where he's at right now, if that is like something he should portray as an identity? Because a lot of people, like,
Mm.
they just consume things and they
Yeah.
adapt it and they hold on to it because they say, like,
Yeah.
what you said, that's me. That's me. I
Mm.
can't be any other way. But how can
Yeah.
someone discern what is right, what is wrong, and how, what is maybe a thing that you would tell him how he could open up a little gap for interpretation
Yeah.
for himself?
Yeah. Man, I could spend like 2 hours just on that question.
And we have.
I think, yeah, and I think, in terms of right or wrong, um, that's a tough one to explain because that's a perception as well.
100%.
Not everybody has, and I'm not trying to do that whole, well, let me answer that by asking you this, but
Exactly.
it's when someone says, well, how do you know it's right or wrong? Um, that's not up to me to discern because we don't have the same moral compass. So
Mm-hmm.
what I do, I have what I believe is right for everybody in this world, uh, but that doesn't mean that it is. I
Mm-hmm.
believe, and the other thing about identity is everybody has a conflicting moral compass, but anyway, so what I would say for this person is just knowing that you identify with it is a huge step. For someone to say, I am a workaholic is huge because
Mm-hmm.
what that means, or I'm obsessed with this, or I put this above everything. What that means is they are now understanding that their psyche, every part of who they are subconsciously, every decision they make leads towards that thing being satisfied at the expense of something that isn't that thing. So if someone is a workaholic, and they have a choice between their son's concert and a board meeting, where do they go? They go to the board meeting. Not because they don't love their son, but because they love work more. And their identity comes from being the businessman. So then what happens is there's going to be a crossroads where the family is going to suffer. Because if you're a family man and you have a wife and you have kids or whatever it is, and your identity is in something that pulls you away from them, it's going to catch up to you. And so then what happens is you order your priorities. You have to see what your priorities are. Like your identity, you will act based off of your priorities. And your priorities tend to show you what your identity is in. So it's like, in this situation, what do you pick? In this situation, what do you pick? In this situation, what do you pick? And then you
Mm-hmm.
pursue that in all of your decisions. So someone who cares about money more than anything, they don't have whatever it is they're going to do is going to involve them making money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And someone might say, well, what's wrong with that? I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. It's understanding that when you make a decision, you have money in mind, which means what is um At what expense is that coming? Typically, it's at the expense of other people's emotions, other people's feelings, situations. So you're like, I don't care about that. I'm making money.
Mhm.
You know, and so yeah, for the person who's like, what I think what you were saying is, how do you open that gap? How do you figure out, you know, your identity? It's also, who are you now? And if you continue down this path, is it going to turn into who you want to be? And you have to know that as well. Like if you don't know, and not what you want to do, you know, it's not, oh, well, I want to do this and do this and do this. Like that's all good. But when it comes to identity, it's who are you and what are you known for, and who are you known as, you know? And
Mm.
so then when you figure that out, if those things are conflicting with what you're doing now, so if you're like, I want to be a family man and I want to be this, and I want to be someone who, you know, my wife can rely on and my kids look up to, and I'm accountable and all these things. I want to be that, but all my priorities are leading me away from that direction. You're gonna have to choose, you know,
Mhm.
which one it's gonna be.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and understanding that your identity typically means something else is gonna suffer. Right. So
100%.
like for me, with my identity is this, because I'm cool with like these other things need to be here because I don't function from that place. Your identity is where you function from as well. So if you're functioning from a place that always needs money, if you're functioning from a place that always needs affirmation, if you're functioning from a place where um, whatever it is, uh, that is where you live,
Mhm.
and that's how you act in a way that makes you addressed that way.
And you evolve through it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the base layer of it, because I talked in the very first episode, it's called The Journey to Authenticity. I said the very first step to understanding, like to getting on that journey, to getting on that path of getting to know you, self-awareness needs to come into play. And
Mm,
I think I mentioned a couple of times already that a lot of people are in a state in their life where sometimes it feels like it's an autopilot, like day by day is going by and you never really take the time to like actually assess if where you're going in life right now is where you want to be going. And I always say that self-awareness is something that you should actually practice on a daily basis. Like through you, I started writing down and I started caring more about myself and who I want to become. So what did I do? I started taking out a pen and a piece of paper and just started writing out every single day some things that I like about myself, some things that I don't like about myself. Then I wrote down
mm,
things that I'm good at, things that I'm not good at. Then I started writing down another day, what do I like, what do I not like, right? And slowly you create the self-awareness. But if you're just constantly living in this autopilot, life is kind of like you're not in control. You're just sitting on the passenger seat with a car that is driving without a driver, or it has a
yep,
driver, but you don't see the driver, right? And the
yep.
car is moving in any type of direction and you have no control of navigating. And you just, I wouldn't like, victim is a hard word, but you're kind of like this, you're influenced, you're not in control of your own destiny. So I
Mm-hmm.
think for what you said, if you want to find out who you are and like working on yourself and creating this balance, like it's, law of cause and effect. Like my action has a equal energetical reaction. So
Mm-hmm.
if I choose work over family, obviously family as an effect, you're gonna lack it. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
start feeling, you know, unloved. They
Yeah,
feel like you're not really taking time for them anymore. And the more you like pivot in this direction, the heavier the effect will get.
yeah.
So I 100% agree with you. And I think to getting started on that journey of self-discovery and understanding who you are, because now we actually build a base over the last couple of minutes of putting essence to the words of identity and self-discovery, right? I stumbled upon this really beautiful quote that is always in front of my head because in order for you to find yourself, you need to be able, or you need to be willing to give up yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be willing to lose yourself in order
Mm-hmm.
to find yourself. What do you say? Like, what's your reaction to this quote and how has it impacted your life?
Yeah. Um, I would say that the first thing would be understanding what self you're going to be losing.
Hmm.
A lot of, people hear that and they go, lose myself to find myself. I understand that. Yeah. I have to get rid of these habits in order to get these new ones, but it's literally an entire paradigm of like, this is not who I am anymore, and I'm not functioning from this place anymore. There might be remnants of that that come up, um, but the percentage of the time that I will be acting like that person will be far below. It'll go from, I was 90% this person and 10% this person to a total flip where your pursuits change, the way you speak changes, the way you evaluate information changes, like all of that changes. Um, and the biggest thing you're losing, no matter what self it is pride. Uh, that
Hmm.
is at the root of identity. Um, there's a stubbornness, it's like, no, you can't tell me what this is. I can do whatever I want. This is who
Hmm.
I am. In
Hmm.
America, the throwaway line is always, it's a free country. I can do what I want,
It's America, man. It's America.
Yeah. But then there's the asterisk of, well, you can do what you want as long as blah, 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 blah. Right.
Hmm.
So to, lose yourself to find yourself. Um, I mean, for me, it means something different. To you, it might mean something different, but it's more of, it's a transitionary quote, right? Like I'm going from this state of mind to this state of mind, and in this state of mind, this is where I'm going to function because of the necessity. And typically, when people get to that point where they're just desperate and they need to change and they need to lose themselves to find themselves, uh, it's typically out of desperation because whatever it is they're doing isn't working anymore. Um, and so what I see a lot of people do is they focus on habits, which is great. The problem is all they're doing is putting the same disease into a different limb. So I see a lot of um, the 75 hard, which is cool. I have my thoughts about that. There's a lot of people
Hmm.
that we're very extreme culture,
Hmm.
uh, where it's not like, all right, I'm gonna develop this scenario where over time I'm gonna gradually go like this. It's like I feel like crap and I've never done this before, so I'm gonna do a marathon and then boom, back down. And we're a very spiky sort of, I'm gonna go for everything or nothing. It's like I've never made any big changes in my life, so I'm gonna do 75 days of blah 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 blah. And then
Bro,
what they did,
literally the first time I wanted to start running, I said, "Hey, let's do a mile. Let's do a
yeah, yeah,
kilometer." And
yeah,
then the
yeah,
second
which
day
is
I said it
great,
was
which
it was so easy. It was
yeah,
so easy.
yeah,
Let's go for two. And then the
yeah,
third day I said, "Man, two, like I can do this, man." So I did like two and a
yeah,
half, nearly like three on the third day. And after 10 days, I went to 10 kilometers within like 10 days. The next 3 months, I couldn't
hmm,
run because
yeah,
my legs were absolutely
yeah,
swollen and
yeah,
cramped
yeah,
because your body needs to get used to it.
yeah. And yeah, it's a lot of it's not sustainable. And what we do is we focus on the outside, hoping the change will come from the inside. But before you do the thing, what is it in you that is making you feel like you need that kind of change in your life? Like, I would want there to be an evaluation in between that space of, this is where I am, this is what I think I need to change my life. Right there is where you figure out the identity crisis. So it's like, okay, where are you at where you feel like the only thing that's going to change where you are is doing the most extreme thing you've ever done? You've never worked out, and you're about to do 75 days straight of 2 workouts a day, one of them being outside. 10, you never read, and you're doing 10. Like, what is it that isn't working for you anymore? And you start there, but you start there, and then that's where you go, okay, well, I feel empty. Empty of what? What would fill you? What is the thing that you think fills you? This. Okay, that's
Mm.
what you thought before. And when you were full of that, you still end up at the 75 hard. you still end up here. You still, and I don't know what 75 hard is just an easy example because it's everywhere. And I'm not going to deny, like,
explain to like people who
yeah, so
don't really know. Maybe
75
it's an
hard,
American
I
thing.
believe, yeah, so I believe it was created by Dave Frizella. I might get his first name wrong. Anyway, there was a big social media guy who, you know, and I don't want to discredit him in any way. There was a guy who created a challenge basically of 75 days of no alcohol, no cheat meal, 10 pages a day of motivational reading of some sort, 2 workouts a day. One of them has to be outside, and then like something else. And, you know, I get it. A lot of people did it. A lot of people have seen great results. But I'd be interested to do a study on people a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens a lot of the time is someone does something crazy, they do 75 hard, and it's just an accomplishment. And they talk about how they, yeah, dude, I did 75 hard 2 years ago. I'm still miserable, but I did that, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
and again, there are people where that's how they change, but I'm talking about majority. We go external first because internal is harder. It is way easier to go, oh, I'm going to work out, I'm going to read, I'm going to do this, than it is to sit and be like, what is eating at my soul? What
100%.
is it that is making me like, and the other thing is, what is it that is making all these people perceive me in this way? I'm the guy, I'm this, and I go home and I cry every night. What is that? That's
Mm-hmm.
the set. That's 75 hard. 75 hard. I would make one of 75 seconds of silence and think about yourself. That's
Mm.
harder,
Wow.
you
That's the
know?
nugget for today.
Yeah, like
That's
you
much
can't,
harder.
yeah. And you
Like,
know,
bro,
say what you will, but
it's literally
yeah,
you're speaking, because as you were speaking, you probably noticed my expressions, because this is like this is 100% me. What you
yeah.
just explained, this was me over the last couple of years, so much. Um, until we actually started speaking, like talking beginning of this year again, and you started coaching me. For me, my physical shell was always my altar. You know, it was
Mm,
my altar and my ego. It was there to make me feel happy, and it was there to beat me down. Like if I look at myself, I am my hardest critic, and I've
mm,
always had this kind of, well, I guess it's through external circumstances, maybe through childhood, maybe through things that were there that were not there. I'm not going to go into details here too much. I want to keep that for a later episode. But there was a lot of things that I had to struggle with, even though, despite like I had a really beautiful childhood, but there was so much like not emptiness inside of me, but so much like unanswered questions that I never gave myself or got myself the answer to. So there was this
yeah.
hole inside of me that constantly made me nervous whenever I was not doing anything. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
physical, like doing something physically, was for me the only answer to quiet my mind. So what did I
Mm-hmm.
do? I distracted myself with going to the gym. I distracted myself with, I don't know, going out with friends and drinking, partying, doing drugs, like stupid things, you know, like that you do as a teenager. I was constantly trying to quiet my mind, and it was working really well. Because when you're in
Yeah.
that moment and you're working out and you see your body changing, you're like, man, my life is going great. So many
Mm-hmm.
things are changing for me. I'm becoming a better man. I'm becoming a better version. And then you get older and you hit like, I don't know, literally, that can be anything. You're walking on so thin ice that a simple flu that knocks you out for a week and a half, it destroys you. It kicks you right back into an identity crisis again,
Yeah.
because you've never actually left your first identity crisis. It kicks you right back in, because
Yeah.
everything it does, it quiets your mind. It lets those intrusive thoughts come in, and it says, deal with it. You
Yeah.
cannot do anything else but just to absorb it right now, because physically you're not able to do anything if you
Yeah.
don't want to make it worse. And that for me, bro, was literally the worst realization ever, is that even though I look healthy, I feel healthy, even though I have such good, like amazing friends around me, like things seem to look so good, like other people perceive me as this person where everything goes well,
Yeah.
I was just empty. Not
Mm-hmm.
empty, but there was such a huge hole inside of me that was lacking self-love and
Yeah.
self-appreciation and acceptance of the self, and just understanding who I am. What are my values? What are my beliefs?
Yeah.
I never wondered about that seriously. that it took me until I was actually 27 this year, right? 26, to be there and say like, okay, so what if I actually start writing down my thoughts? What if I take those 75 seconds, those 5 minutes, those 10 minutes a day to think of who I am? There were so many realizations. I cried so much once I realized like how much time, like I don't say how much time I wasted, because I never wasted any time. It's
Right.
always a learning curve.
Yeah.
But I cried so hard once I realized like, no matter how hard I want to change my external circumstances, it's not going to change a single millimeter about how I feel from the inside. And you can be running your entire life. You can be the toughest guy. You can have the most money. You can, because like millionaires have this a lot of times where they just overcompensate and they just focus on one thing and they blend out everything else. And you have this typical millionaire depression, right? And for billionaires, it's usually it's like billionaire suicidal thoughts that once you get that thing, once you get out of this bubble, all of a sudden, the same problems that you had 5, 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes
still there.
Exactly the same, just the weight has changed.
Yeah.
It's not the same weight anymore. It carries 20 years of weight with it.
Yeah. And that's
like the worst, man.
Yeah. And we're very much external solutions for internal problems, I would say, is a big thing, you know. And it's, you tried and you were found wanting, you know. That's one of the big things is you know, just the yearning that most people feel like there's something more. There's, everybody has that knowledge, that subconscious feeling of like, I know there's something more to me. You know, and you know, which is really interesting, and a lot of people I feel like are starting to realize that, you know, they're handling it in different ways. But the big thing too is when people look at their identity, they go, well, I am who I am because of this. And true identity is I am who I am regardless of this. So
can you repeat that?
Yeah, so typically people will say I am who I am because of this thing or person or whatever it is. But true identity is I am who I am regardless of this.
So beautiful.
And so when you look at the depth of the pain of racial conflict, religious conflict, of all these movements, right? The reason it's so deep is because they're fighting for who they think they are. And it's like, I am who I am because of how I look. You don't understand. If you look like me, then you would be doing the same, you know. But
and
it's
you adapt.
okay.
You adapt this entire historic.
Yeah, and then what happens is you create group identity because you find all the other people that think the same way about the same thing that you do, and you create a mob. And then you go and you force that on everybody else, and you get them to validate your identity, and you're actually hurting yourself more. And then the other people that are like, okay, I'll do it. They're hurting them too, because it's like, don't you understand? That doesn't make you who you are. That's a part of who you are. You don't need your ethnicity to define who you are. You can appreciate it. You can acknowledge it. You can whatever. You don't need money to define who you are. You're not who you are because of this, or this. You are who you are regardless of all this stuff. Right. And it's crazy, the perception. It's like, if you see a guy walking down the street, and I'm just making this example up on the spot, so bear with me, but he's got a super nice suit on, Rolex, nice shoes, gets out of a Ferrari. Okay. And he starts walking. Everybody that looks at him and saw him get out of the Ferrari, what are they thinking? Rich, successful, probably has everything he wants, whatever. So imagine this mental picture. As he's walking, he takes off his watch. Okay. So you just remove a very expensive part of that perception. So now people just see a guy in a suit. Then you remove the suit jacket and they're walking, and it's just a guy in slacks and a t-shirt. Then you replace the slacks with jeans and he keeps walking. And then you replace the jeans with a tank, or you replace the shirt with a tank top. You take his hair from being super nice to kind of messed up a little bit. And then he gets on a moped. That same guy within that walk someone is now going to see him and think he's just whoever on a moped, but it's the same guy.
And then at a
And
certain point, you let him walk through downtown LA
yeah,
without a
yeah,
moped, and all of a
yep,
sudden, everyone's like, "Who's that dude,
yeah,
man?
exactly.
My
And
blessings to
what
him."
changed, everything that changed was external.
Mm.
Now, of course, we are going to build a perception based off of what we see because we can't help it. But it's that knowledge of like when you're at an event, and the other thing too is like a normal person isn't going to say, "Hey, what car did you drive here?" Like if it's a
Mhm.
very exclusive event, people are going to be like, "They're here for a reason. Let me get to know who this person is." That's what you should do at least.
Sure.
So yeah, kind of I just wanted to share that because a lot of it we build another other people's identity for them also, you know?
What would you say are the different layers that you would consider that make up identity? Because I know you can break it down in like I googled eight different layers that you can break it down, and I think it goes even further where you have literally upbringing, your values, your beliefs, personality traits, physical identity,
Yeah, yeah.
social identity, culture. Like what for you are like the most important and most visible ones that one can look at, one if someone starts doing the work on himself?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do is figure out what your core values are. Um, like what it is that you value the most, and you typically function from that place. There's like things you value a lot, and then there's a core value, which is this is the most important thing to me. And so subconsciously, when you're making a decision or meeting someone new, you look for that to be affirmed, or you look for someone that does the opposite to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and typically, this is kind of funny. I figured this out along the way too. Someone's pet peeve is typically in opposition with that person's core value, right?
Interesting.
So it's like something that annoys people is I value this and it doesn't look like you value it as much as I do. And that just, and there's like, oh, my pet peeve is not mine, but just someone might say, my pet peeve is when someone has bad hygiene. The only reason that's a pet peeve is because that person values good hygiene. Someone doesn't care about their hygiene, they don't care, right? So I would start there because once you figure out what you value the most, you will start to learn where you gravitate in situations. Helping you figure that out too. If someone says, "Oh, I value growth and I value progression," okay, and then it's like, okay, let's say you have progression. What is it that you value next? Like, I value comfort. Is there anything more important to you than feeling comfortable? If the answer is no, we look at their life. And when they want to go to the gym, if they're a little bit tired, they don't go because they value comfort more than they value progression. So when you're making decisions, you have to know what you value, and what you value typically will embody and play a huge role in how you step into the world. And so the second that value is compromised, bye-bye, you know?
Mm.
And so I would say start there, figure out those values.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
those values also play a role in your behavior, right? And there's the kind of cheesy line of emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. So all you're doing is you're putting an emotion, whatever energy you feel into that behavior. And by knowing what it is that you value, you'll understand when you feel a certain way about a certain thing that makes you do a certain thing. And then you go, okay, what is it? You don't go, why do I do this all the time? You go, where did it start? What made me do this? Okay. And then you have to understand communication, which is literally at its core form, it's external response, or excuse me, external behavior, internal response. That's communication. Lesson done. Something happens, I respond inside. How I feel inside makes me act a certain way. How I act makes someone else have an internal feeling, which then makes them react. And there's one of two options. We are either going to accurately express how we feel, or we're going to inaccurately express how we feel. The problem is when we inaccurately express it, we still feel the same, but someone can only respond based off of our expression. So then we get addressed improperly when all that person has is what we give them, and then we get mad at them for not seeing into our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest breakdowns in identity crisis is communication with yourself, because if you don't know how you communicate with yourself, or how you think about yourself, or how you talk to yourself, of course you're not going to, someone else isn't going to know how to do that with you, because you don't even know it yourself.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how to talk to themselves.
Yeah, or they do and they just don't realize it. They're like, I just say this about myself, and I'm like, do you listen to what you say to yourself? I know you talk to yourself. You know you talk to yourself, right? Yeah. Okay, tell me what you said to yourself during this situation. And they tell me, I'm like, so what if I were to say that to you? How would you feel? They're like, oh, I'd feel pretty terrible.
Man,
But it's me,
we
so
are the
it's different,
worst. We are the worst critics. We are so bad to ourselves, and it's literally so horrible. Like, I mean, probably you have the same thing. I have the same. Like, everybody out there has the same thing. How we talk to ourselves is never ever 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 how we would ever wish somebody to talk to us.
Yeah.
Like, we are our hardest critics, and the way we downgrade ourselves, the way we call ourselves stupid, the way we like literally deem our entire existence in our own head, this has to stop. Because if
Yeah.
that's the basis of like healthy self love, healthy self like recovery, like getting to know yourself, you actually need to treat yourself like a friend. Because if you want to build a friendship with someone or a relationship, start with a friendship, right? And if you want to start a relationship with yourself and you want to start loving yourself more and more and more, you have to start with the basics. You have to like see yourself as a friend, talk to yourself like you would be a friend, support yourself, like say positive affirmations, say positive words, like not like, oh my gosh, so you fucking idiot, like why did you fail this again, you're so stupid, man, you can't do anything in life, you suck, like you're not going to get anything done, you're going to be a loser forever. Like, start with, hey man, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I see that it was hard, I see that it was not easy, but we're going to try harder next time, and we're eventually going to make it work, you know?
Yeah. And you know what's funny is I've seen this happen, which is crazy. But there are people who their identity is based off of affirmation, and so they will self-defamate in out loud to get affirmation. So their identity is like, okay, I need to be affirmed, and I know that so and so, whenever I talk bad about myself, they make me feel better. So I'm
Now
going
I
to talk
get you.
about how much of a piece of crap I am because they're going to make me feel better. And that's someone's identity. And then what happens is, the longer that gets affirmed, the more you believe it's real. So then over time you go, well, I am just a piece of crap, but I get affirmation from this person. And that's how a toxic relationship starts too. Like if I truly love you, okay, let's say, and you're a drug addict. If I truly love you, am I going to keep buying you drugs and giving them to you, watching you totally destroy yourself? Or am I going to physically drag you out of wherever you are and put you into rehab? And you're going to hate me during that whole time because you're on the come down. What's love there? We confuse love and tolerance.
100%. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. And so if I had a friend who was just negative all the time, and I do love them and care about them, I'm going to call them out. And in that process, though, I'm going to help them. Be like, hey, you talk like this about yourself all the time. Let's figure out where that's coming from.
Everyone needs a person like that. Everyone should have someone around them that they can get 100% confirmation from, like, about what is real and not about what they want to hear. Like, I started having so close friends, like same as like you, for example, or like my closest 5 people around me, my boys, they're literally, I'm so happy that I have them, because each of that those relationships, they sprung out of exactly that, like
Yeah.
not being kind of like validating each other on like our bullshit, but actually being like, actually my best friends came through conversations that we had where they told me or I told them, dude, what you are doing right there is absolutely not okay, and you should
Yeah.
reconsider what you do right now. And that realization of the other person, or of me hearing that, was like, oh shit. Like, and even in my head it was like, all right, he caught me. God damn it. There's no way to hide, you know, like, okay, yeah, I fucked up. I try to do it better next time, you know, and that's how I start like treating people around me only, because I see the change that goes through their mind once you're 100% honest. Like, this is what I love about as well, like the inspirational world out there, the motivational world. When you hear certain people like David Goggins or something, like, yeah, maybe he's like real hard and he's like maybe too hard. But one thing that all of these like Jocko Willink, David Goggins, Chris Williamson, everything they have together, Alex Hormozy. A lot of people hate on Alex Hormozy, but one thing I love about him is he tells you your stuff right into your face, whether you like it or whether you don't, but it's exactly what you need to hear, and it always hits different. It hits you like a freight train. You realize like, holy moly, like he literally said what my mind was trying to hide from me over the last couple of years. I love you. Right. I love that kind of conversation. And I think this is how everyone should treat everyone. So would you say that authentic and honest, direct communication is like the cure to toxic relationships and a toxic society overall? Because I think we're honeypotting a lot overall. It's like one side is validating the other side, or like the actions of certain people for like the benefit of themselves, instead of like being honest and like creating this kind of like harmony between each other.
Yeah, I think it's tough because they think they're being honest, you know, so it's like it's authentic for them, for sure. They think it's authentic. And so I would say, more than authenticity, which is obviously extremely important, reality, dude. Like, just understanding what's actually going on and what's actually happening, because a lot of people, they literally will only function in this life in hypotheticals and in perceptions and all. And it's like the whole thing is, oh, this is my true self, this is my authentic self, but it's only according to them, you know. And so then what happens is they're like, oh, well, I want you to address me this way because this is my authentic self. And so what you were saying, you know, about, is honest and authentic communication important? Of course, but what's more important, I think, is gauging reality. Because I've given this example before too, where, you know, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone and it looks like they're stabbing someone, and I know this is kind of extreme, but you'll see where I'm going. But it looks like they're stabbing someone, and I run over there and I'm like, you know, I'm going to try to stop it or whatever it is. And they go, oh, no, don't worry, this is for a movie. And then I look over and I see a camera crew and I see all this stuff, and it's a fake knife and fake blood and it's actors. And I go, oh, okay, like, that's cool. There's two people in this world. Okay, there's the one that thinks they see something happening. They respond that way. And then they go, and then they see that that's not real. And they go, oh, whew, okay. And they're like, oh, that's reality, I can move on. And then there's the person that says, well, I thought that was real, so it's still real to me, even though that's not true. And that's where they function for the rest of their day and their life. And they go and they tell people, hey, I saw two people getting stabbed today. And they put the period there instead of saying, I saw two people getting stabbed today, but it turns out it was just for a movie and this and that and the other. Because they are so set on how it felt. It's like, oh, it felt so real and I thought it was happening. And then someone literally tells them, you're wrong. And they go, oh, it doesn't matter, it's my truth. Off they go. And then what happens is they mislead every person they ever talk to about that situation.
Yeah, big times. And you have
You
great
know?
storytellers. You have great storytellers that sometimes, like, I bet you had as well a couple like those that guy around you, that person around you that is just so good at telling stories. But then you hear from friends, it's like, yo, this guy, he's like full of shit. Don't listen to a word he
or
said.
I'll
then you
hear
realize you're like,
someone tell a story and I'm like, that didn't happen. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of delusional, and I think this is where a lot of awareness, I believe we're on a good path, and I think, I think we're at a point in our life, in our society, where we're at this turning point, right? Like things are splitting into such extremes right now that one side is starting to wake up and is like trying to, save as much people as possible and get them over to the side which is working on themselves, like creating the self-awareness, this woke culture, just putting themselves first again. And then you have that other side, as you said, in politics, that is just like trying to pull everyone over to the dark side because they have better cookies, right? Like you always
Hmm.
have those two sides right now that are happening. But I believe that if you want to create a better society and a better world, it starts with you, and it starts with you doing as much and as good work, like the best work you can do in your surrounding, because you can't change
Yeah,
the
and there's
world at once.
also, yeah, of course. And also there's just no accountability anymore because there's so much fear around like offending someone, right? Where
Yeah, but that's a whole different
there
topic, man. Like I think our
yeah,
society is at a point where it's like, I don't even want to get into it, because I think that topic is like very it's like an elephant in a porcelain shop, right? It's very
yeah,
dangerous
yeah.
to
And
like get into
I'm
it.
saying in terms of identity,
Hmm.
because there's no accountability, there are people living in these these false identities because there's no one to hold them accountable to who they actually are,
100%.
you
They
know?
even affirming it. They're affirming it
Yeah, yeah.
rather than being like, dude, you're not a cat. Calm down.
Not just affirming it, glorifying it and forcing it, you know? Because it's
Yeah.
not enough to be like, all right, dude, you do your thing, whatever it is. And it doesn't even have to be about the crazy stuff I'm talking about. It's like someone believing a lie about themselves. It's not enough to just say, okay, that's a lie, but do your thing. It's like, I now have to go to the streets and say, this person here believes this, and we should lift them up on a pedestal, and everybody needs to make sure that they affirm this lie that this person, whatever it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and it's funny too, like one of the one of the biggest statements that I've heard in sessions, with whoever it is that I'm coaching is like, I never thought of it that way. Or
Mm.
that's a question I need to ask, or I have these questions now. So it would be a big part of it is just knowing the right questions to ask. It's, a lot of people also, they're like, oh, I really need proof for this thing. And then my question would be, do you even know what proof looks like? And if the proof would be in front of you, would you know that that was the proof?
Hmm.
And that's the importance of knowing what questions to ask. Like, are you just asking random questions, and the other thing is, if you're going to ask these questions, are you actually on the pursuit of the answers? Because a lot of
Hmm.
people don't actually want answers, which is why they don't ask the questions.
Hmm. Hmm. A lot of people are out there to talk just to talk, not actually to ask questions and to grow and to learn, or such things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, yeah, I have another question, which it kind of came up, and it just popped into my mind now again, because I was talking in my very first episodes, about authenticity, the journey to authenticity, and how it's like all intertwined with the topic of identity. And like I already laid the foundation a little bit, what authenticity means, like what that journey to self-discovery looks like. And it's definitely not a pleasant one, because it involves a lot, like facing yourself, facing your own fears, your, like whoever you thought you were, and then getting to know who you really are, right? But one point was the upbringing of social masks, because especially like if we're talking about first world countries, right? We're talking about a very capitalistic, democratic social state, which has like a lot of like the working classes, where a 9 to 5 is normal, and you're just in this you're just in this state where you constantly, like you're at home, and you're wearing this one mask with your spouse, with your family, with your friend, with your girlfriend, whatsoever, right? And then you get to
Mm-hmm.
work, and you put on this completely different mask because of your social surrounding and your environment. And then, for example, when you're with your best friends, you're different, right? So my question now here to you is like, how can we reconcile that conflict when we are putting on these multiple identities, these multiple masks, and how can we dissolve that? Like, because I believe truly that once you get to that point of authentic being, understanding who you are, and putting this like all of these layers and masks over each other, you have that core that should always stay the same no matter what. What's your response to that? Because I know we're slowly coming to the end of this podcast as well. It's been a while, but that's like one quick question which I had like as one of the last bits here. So what's your thought on
Yeah,
that?
I think, obviously different environments are going to bring out different parts of you. Um, I'm not going to talk to my friends the way that I talk to my family in certain ways. In the same way, I'm not going to talk to a stranger the way that I talk to my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that that also comes with a certain level of awareness. What I would be mindful of is when one mask, if masks start to be there, um, and it compromises like who you are as a person, right? And so I would say even more than a mask, it's just like you're just putting a different hat on. You as a whole are not changing your entire being in each of these scenarios. It's just different aspects of who you are going to reveal themselves more depending on the environment and the situation that you're in, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
would say that number one, making sure they're in the right spot. So making sure that you don't wear the work mask at home. It's like don't bring like that belongs here, this belongs here, this belongs here, right? And so, and some people might have other things to say about this, but I think from what I've seen, um, if you are truly confident in your identity, it won't even be like you're putting on a different hat or a different mask. You're just acting according to what's going on, and nothing about you is changing. You'll just amplify as needed. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to an event or something, I need a network. I'm not schmoozing all these people and being someone I'm not. I'm just being friendly and figuring things out about them and asking them genuine questions. And I am genuine and I'm able to do that authentically because I am genuinely curious about who these people are and where they came from and whatever it is, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's figuring out how to wear those hats and stay authentic without compromising and without putting a hat where it shouldn't be. I think that's a big thing as well, which comes with identity, where again, if you're a workaholic, your work hat is never coming off. It's going to be on
Mm-hmm.
at all times. Like everything's a transaction to you, and you look
100%.
at, and what's funny is you'll see, like we were talking about the millionaires and the billionaires and the social media people and what they do. I don't want to say they, because there are what the ones who do this do. There's a lot of great ones out there. I don't like to do the whole category of like everybody who does,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, the ones who do this, I know their identity. And it's the ones who bash on people who aren't pursuing the thing they're pursuing. Where they're like, if you're a 25-year-old man right now and you're not looking to make $1 million by the time you're 27, you're a loser and you're worthless and you shouldn't, you know, if you're not making this amount a year, you're not really an entrepreneur. If you're not an entrepreneur right now, what are you doing? Like, you're telling me that you're a 26-year-old man who's single with no responsibilities and you're not doing every single thing you can to start a business or be a CEO. Like when I was your, and that statement is all about them. It has nothing to do with the other people. It's them saying, look what I did. I need you to do what I'm doing so that I can feel like I'm useful in this world. And there
Because
are people
it's
who,
basically his own internal conversation. It's
yes,
because if you imagine he's speaking to a camera and he's all by himself in that room, and whatever he is saying is
or
just a
even to
direct
crowds,
reflection,
even
even to
even to
crowds.
crowds,
Yeah.
like, it's like, or they're on a panel or whatever it is. It's like, I meet these loser kids and they're just not trying to do anything with their life. And it's like, no, no, no. What you're saying is, I meet people who actually don't care about money as much as you do, don't care about the status as much as you do, and you don't like that. And you feel because of who you are that they need to be doing that. And so you force your ideology down their throat. And when they disagree, you bash on them and they become a category for you. And you say, all these guys who are doing this or aren't doing this. But what you really mean is anybody who disagrees with the way that I live my life and the way that I do this is for you, you know? And it's hard to watch. It's so
Yeah,
cringy.
yeah.
And it's also like, hey, believe it or not everybody wants what you want. And that's fine. You know what I mean? And what happens is people who aren't mentally strong, they will listen to someone like that and they will build their identity based off of that perception, thinking, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. And so if they don't have an identity, they'll build one based off of the opinions and the perceptions and all those different things. And then that's how they step into the world in a false narrative. And they never feel like they're belonging because it's not them. It's a version they created to satisfy the perception of someone else. And that happens in family and business and relationships, whatever it is.
100%. 100% agree with you. And I think that's a good point to slowly finish this episode off with. I mean, it has been an absolute pleasure. I do have one last question before I let you off the hook, because I know you have to go, you have to leave soon.
Yeah.
But first of all, honestly, thank you so much. You know, I love spending time with you, and honestly, making this like an official thing, like having you on a podcast, talking with you, and like not drifting off like we usually do. I mean, we're gonna have multiple podcast episodes like this together.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be times where we will be drifting off, but I love this approach that we had today, because it has been like 1.5 hours of just like bam, 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 you know, stuff that actually matters and that resonates all the time. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time. And finding the time as well in your busy day to jump on this podcast with me. You're the very first guest episode. It's an absolute pleasure. Like, I'm super happy to have you with me, and I highly value you as a friend and as a brother. And
you as well, bro.
I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in person again, because that's going to be the next big thing, you know. So maybe let's see if we're going to do that next year. Okay.
Or
last question. Or
possibly December.
Possibly in December, Mr. Daniel Schuler, the half American, half Swiss person, is gonna come to Zurich.
Switzerland.
Yeah, and Mr. Altenhofen is gonna drive over there for 6 hours to see your boy.
Yeah,
let's go. No, I'm super excited, man. Okay, last question to you, and then we'll finish it off. Okay, so Daniel Schuler, for all of our listeners out there, they're only right now embarking on the journey beyond, you know, on the journey of self-discovery. What's one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were younger, that you know now, that you wished more people out there who are struggling right now would know sooner?
Can I give 2 answers?
You can give me 3 if you want to.
Okay. First one is, if you don't make your identity in Christ, you will always be found wanting. I knew that early
Can you repeat
on.
that statement?
If you don't find your identity in Jesus Christ, you will always be found wanting. Always. Which is a whole other podcast episode. That's, for me personally, that would be the first one. Practically applicable to everybody if they don't want to involve religion or whatever it is. Do the first one I said first. But second, I would say, piece of advice that I wish I had. Man. Spend more time learning about your perception of yourself, I think, and figuring out what things make you and comparing those with reality. Which sounds kind of complicated, but I think from an early age, especially now with kids that are 8 years old and on TikTok already, or 4 years old or whatever it is, and their identities are all over the place. But just taking taking more time to be like, okay, this is who I think I am based off of what, and then I'm going to compare this with what's actually going on, and just do reality gauging. I think that would be a big one. Is, hey, as a young man, this is what you need to do. You need to think more about who you are, who you think you are, all the factors that go into that, and figure out how that plays into reality. I think that'd be a big one.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of the beautiful, the knowledge, the content, the value you're giving throughout this last 1.5 hours. I learned a lot about myself, as well as I hope a lot of people out there who are listening right now learned a lot from your words as well. And I'm really looking forward to the next round that we're having, because there's definitely going to be one. So with this being said, thank you guys, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you, Danny, for coming around. And any last words before we hit off?
If any of this resonated, start applying it. I would say, because you deserve to know, and you deserve to, like, when you wake up in the morning and you go to bed at night, and you're able to put your head on the pillow and have a peace that, regardless of my circumstances, regardless of this, whatever it is, I know who I am. That is something that I hope everyone can find. And so do the work, dude. Like, do the work. If you're committed to the gym, and you go to the gym, you go to work every day, you might as well work on yourself every day. If you work out, work on yourself. If you eat, feed yourself. Like, there is no excuse to not figuring out more about how you function in this world. There's just no.
Bro, 100%, 100%. I fully agree with you. And well, before we go, where can people find you?
Schulerr. Not super active on there. Haven't been in a while. I post on my story every now and then. As we start to ramp things up with music again, I'll start posting more. Also on Spotify, p.s. You guys want to hear some music there that I do?
Oh, we didn't even mention that, man. Ooh, that's for the next one, because my boy here, actually, there's a reason why he's in LA. There's a reason why he's like, soon to be the next, the next big thing in the music horizon. Yeah, cool. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for all of the beautiful words. I really appreciate you, man. It was a pleasure. And for all of you guys listening out there, thank you all for tuning in today. If you got only a little bit of value, like Daniel said, try to apply it for yourself. And if this podcast meant something to you, please make sure to share it with a friend of yours, someone that matters, your significant other, and make sure to like, comment, and leave me a beautiful review on Spotify or iTunes, whatever you thought about this episode. All of your support matters. And yeah, man, with this being said, thank you all for tuning in, and see you in the next one.
Auf Wiedersehen.